For the next hour, we'll be talking about how the cost of oil fuels the cost of living crisis. Are there still tricks out there for consumers to help themselves? And how cryptocurrencies are getting aid to Ukraine under the noses of the Russians. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the news. Here's Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Alistair. It's just gone 1 o'clock. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. The UK has announced 14 additional sanctions against Russians, with broadcaster RT among those targeted for spreading propaganda. It comes after Ukraine's president called for tougher action against Moscow. Volodymyr Zelensky received standing ovations as he addressed the Dutch and Australian parliaments this morning. He told them Russia poses a nuclear threat to the world.
Whatever is happening in our region because of the Russian aggression, what is destroying the lives of people, has become a real threat to your country and to your people as well, because this is the nature of the evil. It can instantly cross any distance. Russian representatives, officials, official propagandists, they are openly discussing the possibility of using nuclear weapons against those who don't want to subdue.
Meanwhile, speaking in Brussels, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says there's no evidence that Russia is scaling back.
According to our intelligence, Russian units are not withdrawing but repositioning. Russia is trying to regroup, resupply and reinforce its offensive in the Donbas region. So we can expect additional offensive actions bringing even more suffering.
In a rare public address, Britain's spy chief has said Vladimir Putin's advisers are scared to tell him the truth about the progress of his Ukraine invasion. Speaking in Australia, Sir Jeremy Fleming told the audience the Russian president has massively misjudged the resistance of the Ukrainian people and that Putin's overestimated the abilities of his military to secure a rapid victory.
We've seen Russian soldiers, short of weapons and morale, refusing to carry out orders, sabotaging their own equipment, and even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft. And even though we believe Putin's advisers are afraid to tell him the truth, what's going on and the extent of these misjudgments must be crystal clear to the regime.
The Foreign Secretary is urging India to join allies in opposing Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Liz Truss is in New Delhi for talks with her counterpart. It follows concerns the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, is reluctant to publicly condemn Moscow's actions. India's abstained in a series of votes in the United Nations on the issue, and earlier this month it agreed to import 3 million barrels of heavily discounted Russian oil. An MSP is calling for 11,000 empty military homes to be used to accommodate refugees fleeing Ukraine. Gordon MacDonald has written to the Defence Secretary urging him to bring the unoccupied properties owned by the MOD back into use. The Home Office has announced 2,700 visas have so far been granted under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. In other news, households are expected to be more than £2,500 worse off due to the cost of living squeeze. New analysis from Labour combined tax hikes, food, energy and fuel prices, as well as mortgage costs. Launching its local election campaign, leader Sir Keir Starmer pledged to cut energy bills by up to £600, funded by a windfall tax on oil and gas companies.
Send a message to Boris Johnson and his Tories that they can't ignore, a message that Britain deserves better than their pathetic, their miserable response.
Firefighters are tackling a large blaze at a business in Stretton in Derbyshire. They say the fire covers an area of 30 metres. Staffordshire police have closed nearby roads and drivers are being advised to avoid the area. No injuries have been reported. And Royal Mail is phasing out its traditional first and second class stamps, replacing them with new barcoded ones. It's part of a modernisation drive boasting added security features. Customers will also be able to watch and share videos by scanning the barcodes in the Royal Mail app. Normal stamps will be valid until February of next year. After that, you'll be able to swap them for new versions. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, let's return to On the Money with Alistair.
Rhiannon, thank you very much indeed. Swapping stamps, there's a novelty. This is On the Money. Coming up, we're talking oil, as President Joe Biden considers the biggest ever release of crude oil from the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And it's all about energy, as Germany considers rationing it, and back home, price caps are en route for a rise. We'll be discussing how to avoid high energy bills as the cost of living crisis deepens. Plus, GB News gives you an exclusive interview with a former P&O Ferries employee who was sacked among those 800 seafaring colleagues. And each day, On the Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview with a business leader or policymaker. And today, I'm absolutely delighted that we'll be talking to William G. William's a cryptocurrency entrepreneur and philanthropist using alternative methods to funnel donations to Ukraine. That comes up later in the show. And as ever, I genuinely want to hear your questions, opinions, suggestions. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. Do stay with us. This is On the Money. So today we're talking energy prices as we all wrestle with the worst cost of living crisis in memory. Pretty well everyone here is feeling it, and it's not just us. Germany is considering rationing energy. Homes will come first, industry will come second. The United States are very twitchy too. As I just said, Joe Biden's considering releasing 180 million barrels of oil in the coming months from the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That would be the largest release since the reserve was created back in 1974. Many of the richest people in the world got there thanks to oil and gas, from the Rockefellers and Gettys to the Saudis and Emiratis. Putin used Russia's as leverage for years until his invasion of Ukraine forced the world to think again and look elsewhere. Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary here have gone to Gulf states, despite their appalling records on human rights, because we, you and I, need their oil and gas. And the UK is planning to spend billions in a rather late effort to achieve energy security. More nuclear power stations, more wind turbines, and less imported energy. But all of that takes time. Right now, the price of crude oil dives and soars according to what's going on in Ukraine and in the world economy. It rose 3% to $113 a barrel yesterday. The day before, it had fallen below $100 a barrel as Russia talked about scaling back its onslaught on Ukraine. And lo and behold, today, it's back down a bit as Biden mulls over that release of those reserves. And there is a sliver of good news. The market predicts an average price of $105 a barrel this year and $89 a barrel next year. Now, when most people think of rising oil prices, they think of their cars. 58% of UK cars still run on petrol, 38% on diesel. And many of us are still complaining that Rishi Sunak's 5p cut in fuel duty still hasn't got through to the pumps, with rising prices gobbling it up anyway. But oil and gas are also used directly to warm many homes, indirectly to make the electricity that keep our lights on, and in much of manufacturing and farming, and to power the lorries delivering everything and anything. You begin to get the picture. So, today's economic growth figures are very slightly better than expected. But how long will that last, given the energy crisis and the cost of living crisis? Well, my panel of guests will make sense of it all and hopefully offer you a few pointers on how to cope. We're on the money on the price of oil. And first up, I'm delighted to be joined by Robert Halfon, the Conservative Member of Parliament for Harlow, Chair of the Education Select Committee and a big campaigner on petrol prices. And here with me in the studio to help me throughout the hour and listen to what Robert's got to say is a friend of this show. There she is, Victoria Scholar, Head of Investments at Interactive Investor. Be with you in just a moment, Victoria. But first, Robert, thanks for joining us. Why isn't the 5p cut in petrol and diesel duty from the spring statement being implemented in some areas?
Well, it's being implemented in most petrol stations, particularly supermarkets, but there are, you're right, too many petrol stations who aren't implementing it. This raises a number of issues about the behaviour of the big oil companies. Alongside Fairfield UK, I've been campaigning for what would be called a pump watch, consumer watchdog or regulator, just as you have an Ofcom to regulate the communications market, to make sure that the price of petrol is fairly reflected, both in terms of the international oil price, but also when the government cuts fuel duty, to make sure that is passed through to the consumer as well. Because what we saw on
the moment Rishi Sunak sat down, having delivered his spring statement, he and Kwasi Kwarteng over across at the Business Ministry sent out a letter saying, I want it done right now, 6 o'clock tonight. You're saying, well, we've got a bit of pressure going on. You need to get out there and find these guys. They're costing you, me and everybody else a lot of money.
Well, this is exactly right. This is why we need a pump watch monitor. I've raised it in the House of Commons on numerous occasions. It isn't just with the tax cut, which the government have introduced in terms of the fuel duty lowering, but when the international oil price goes high, the price goes up at the pumps pretty quickly. When the international oil price falls, it often takes weeks to come back to the motorist. Because
you know better than most that market prices already have pretty well wiped out Rishi's 5p.
But that's not quite the case, because there are many petrol stations across the country, particularly the supermarkets, that have implemented the 5p rise. I've seen that, the 5p cut, I should say.
The price that they're having to pay to the refineries. I was talking to my own local station, and they said those prices are already going back up again.
So, some are, but they would be even higher without the 5p cut in fuel duty. So that's important to note.
Let me move it on to the broader picture, and you and I have talked about this in the past. Is it not now time, whatever you think about the green global warming agenda, is it not now time for this government to take a deep breath and scrap the green levies, park net zero for now, and cut taxes?
We've got to make sure we don't balance the need for environmentalism on the backs of working people. And that has been the problem for some time. I've been campaigning, just as I've been campaigning for lower fuel duty and pump watch, I've also been urging the government to get rid of the green levies. It's 25%. They represent 25% of our energy costs. The government got rid of those, or at least introduced a green downward escalator, so that the green levies would go down when the international energy price is high. It would make a huge difference to customers, to people at home struggling to pay their energy bills. And absolutely, we need to make sure that the move to net zero does not mean that working people have to pay more. And
do you reckon the Prime Minister will change his mind on that? It seemed very much as being his policy. He embraces it. He pushes for it. Are you getting any inkling of hope from the Prime Minister himself?
Well, the question is not whether net zero is wrong. The question is how you do it. And the green levies have got to go. We need to reconsider fracking as well. We've got a potential treasure chest underneath the parts of the United Kingdom that could help with our oil needs. I'm glad to see that some oil companies have been opening up oil fields again, because we need to make sure that we're not dependent. Luckily, we only, I think, 2 or 3% of our energy is dependent on Russian gas, compared to many other countries like Germany. But we need to be very careful that we don't, as I say, we don't balance environmentalism on the backs of working people.
Final question. We just heard Sir Keir Starmer launching his party's campaign for the May elections, talking about your party's miserable response to the energy crisis and the cost of living crisis. But government is spending billions of our money on bailing out those who cannot cope. But Rishi Sunak's made it pretty clear that there's a limit to it. We've got to learn to live within our means.
Well, I don't accept Keir Starmer's narrative. Look, I've been on your programme and others many times campaigning for the government to do things like cut fuel duty that we've just spoken about. But you've got to set it in context. We're paying 50 billion a year at the moment just to pay off the interest of the debt. Next year will be 80 billion. 50 billion is more than the school's budget. So there are very, very difficult decisions for the government, because if we don't pay that 50 billion, if we have another shock on the way, we won't have any money to pay for it. That 50 billion, if we didn't have to pay it on interest, we could spend it on schools and hospitals and cutting taxes for the lower paid. But even with that huge debt, overall it's £2 trillion plus, because we had to spend £400 billion on the pandemic. The government is still spending around £20 billion trying to help the vulnerable. It isn't just the fuel duty cut. They've also raised the national insurance threshold by a historic £3,000. We've raised the tax threshold. We've got the national living wage going up, meaning that families will be £1,000 better off. We've cut the universal taper rate, which means that those working on universal credit will be £1,000 better off. So of course the government can't do everything. Believe me, I've just said I will campaign for more things to be done, but you've got to balance what an extraordinary amount that the government has done against this huge interest debt, as a 50 billion this year, 90 billion next year, that we still have to pay off. It's not going to go away, and that is unfortunately, that really affects has an effect on our public finances and what we're able to spend.
Robert, on debt and interest, we are 100% in agreement. On the others, I'm watching this space, and we'll come and talk about it again. Meantime, thanks very much indeed for finding time for us today. Robert Halfon, Conservative Member of Parliament for Harlow. As I said, listening to that, Victoria Scholar. Pump Watch, he's on their case, and he's got a track record of pushing very, very hard on this. But he didn't strike me as being very optimistic about much else that the government can do.
Well, I don't envy the government right now. It's in a very, very difficult position. Clearly, we're coming out of the pandemic, saddled with huge amounts of debt. At the same time, Rishi Sunak has said that he wants to make sure that he's going to keep taxes low. So he could have potentially increased taxes on some of the big oil giants like BP and Shell that are making massive profits at the moment. But that commitment to that fiscal discipline and keeping taxes low meant that he couldn't actually do that. So he's got a lot of different
bonkers as well. There's 13 billion in it's not a budget, but in the statement that Rishi put out a couple of weeks back. There's 13 billion in there, which the North Sea oil companies are paying extra on levies because the price has gone up. I mean, the money he wants for the health service is there without raising national insurance.
Yeah, and also if we think about the fuel duty cut, that 5 pence, what that actually means for an average family in a 55-litre tank, it's a saving of about £3.30. I mean, what way is that going to go seriously to tackling this cost of living crisis amid rising inflation and price levels across the board going up?
OK, Victoria, for the time being, stay with us. You're here throughout the hour, which I'm thrilled to bits about. Let's talk now to David Fife, because crude oil prices are at the pounding heart of all of this. And David's the chief economist at Argus Media, which looks at global energy price markets. David, give me and our viewers and listeners something to smile about. When will energy costs start falling?
Well, interesting you should mention that. Over the last couple of days, we've seen crude ease by as much as about $10 a barrel. Now, that may be temporary because the fundamentals of supply and demand are still very tight out there within the market. But what we're in the middle of is a period of intense volatility because of the doubts surrounding sort of will they, won't they view on sanctions on Russian energy supplies. So at the front of everyone's mind at the moment are concerns about the security of supply into the global market.
Because I mentioned it in my introduction, the 180 million barrels that Biden's considering releasing from the sacrosanct US reserve. Don't touch it, and it would be the biggest since 74. I got a tweet from one of my followers saying, "You are naive thinking it's going to make any difference. It's a drop in the ocean."
Well, the problem is that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, held in the US but also by other OECD countries, it's essentially a rainy day fund for emergencies, supply side emergencies, and it's something you can sort of use once but once it's gone, it's gone. It's a sort of insurance policy for short-term liquidity, physical liquidity in the market. We've got very tight levels of OPEC spare capacity. We've got low levels of commercial oil stocks held by the oil companies. So if government-held stocks are drawn down over the next 3 to 6 months, it really leaves a system that is running on fumes. And the risk, therefore, is if we have another supply-side shock later in the year and we've drawn down strategic reserves, what then?
Yeah, what then? I mean, we find Halfon said we're going to watch the prices at the pump, and government has got a limit to what it can do because of that huge borrowing figure that's costing us 83 billion in interest. David just says it's incredibly volatile. Biden's 180 may help a little. It is, in my lifetime, and I'm a lot older than you, one of the most intractable cost of living crises I've ever come across.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people have forgotten is that at the height of the pandemic, do you remember where oil prices were? They were at negative. So
couldn't give it away.
Couldn't give it away. Technically, they fell below zero. So that gives you a sense of just how much oil prices have gone up.
Yeah, let me bring David back in for a final thought, and then we've got to go to the break. I'll tell you the other thing that crossed my mind, David, listening carefully to you, and you use that magic word volatility. It's worth reminding folk that before Russia invaded Ukraine, oil prices were on the up, from what Victoria just said, because the world was coming out of the global pandemic. Demand was up, particularly the Far East. So even if Ukraine could be solved tomorrow, there'd still be market pressures.
I think we've had 3 or 4 years of very low levels of investment in oil and gas upstream. And so there are concerns out there about the adequacy of supply for the medium term, and that was driving prices higher. I think the problem now is we've got such intense inflationary pressures feeding through, not least because of energy and food, that we risk tipping the world into a second recession in 2 years. So in a sense, these high prices are going to be very damaging
volatility,
economically.
which you mentioned, is stagflation. A stagnant economy with rising prices.
That's a real risk, and we're seeing the Chinese economy slowing. We're seeing inflationary pressures across Europe, and the risk that we have rising interest rates, a stronger dollar, that's going to hit the emerging market economies that have high levels of debt. So there really is a perfect storm from a macroeconomic standpoint, which may ultimately solve high prices, unfortunately, by weakening economic growth.
Not a good way to end, but we need to be honest with these matters. David, I'm very grateful for your time. Thanks for joining us. And we will be later on in the programme talking to a wonderful woman who may bring you some hope and raise your spirits, so don't go away at all. This is On the Money with me, Alistair Stewart. After the break, we will be focusing on the cost of living crisis and speaking to an energy consumer expert on how to keep your bills down this spring. So do stay with us. You're On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Money with me, Alastair Stewart. The UK is in the midst of a cost of living crisis as living standards fall at their fastest rate since the 1950s. Rising energy costs are at the very heart of this crisis, with families struggling to pay their fuel and their food bills. Well, joining us now in the studio is Jo Gilbert, who's struggled with her own fuel poverty, but did something rather clever in founding Butterfly Energy to share the advice that she's picked up with others. And also sitting here, I guess, hoping to pick up some tips as well, is Victoria Scholar of Interactive Investors. Jo, first of all, as the energy price cap is being raised tomorrow, all I've had so far is an email from my supplier saying, take a meter reading, we need it right now, and a message from USwitch that basically said, hold your nerve. Is that as good as it gets?
I think there's a lot that consumers can do. So it is important that you do supply your energy supplier with regular meter readings. And because the price cap is coming in tomorrow, to make sure that right up to midnight this evening, that you're only paying the costs of the cap as it currently stands. Take a meter reading as close to midnight as possible, preferably a photograph so you've got that evidence there. But submit that reading. I understand that a lot of the websites have actually crashed today, but if you've got that photographic evidence or you've made a note of it, then I think the best way to get that meter reading into your supplier is either via web chat or email today.
Because the basic truth, and Victoria said it earlier, and David, who was on just a moment ago, said it as well, is that the problem, as Margaret Thatcher put it, you can't buck markets. And that price is going to go up. It's just a question of not being conned by the effect of that price.
Yeah, making sure that your account is as optimised as possible. So there is money available for households that, you know, there's certain discounts that a lot of consumers could still be eligible for, like online discounts, paperless billing discounts. So if you're still receiving a paper...
But Robert Halfon, who was on at the top of the programme, who's a good bloke, and I've known him for years, and he's genuinely one of the nice people in politics, he said, that's as good as it gets. You know, we're spending billions already through rebates that you have to pay back, help through local authorities, all sorts of stuff. But that's as good as it gets. How worried does that leave you and Butterfly?
I'm genuinely worried for households in the UK. You know, that there isn't much more that you can actually do in terms of, you know, fuel poverty itself. It is increasingly worrying. There's 3.6 million households currently in fuel poverty. Overnight, that number's going to increase to over 10 million households in the UK who are going to struggle to pay their energy bills. And those bills will start arriving throughout the month of April, and it's really, really worrying.
OK, one step back from that, because, I mean, that repeats, it's gloomy, but it's honest. I sit there at home and shout at... I have one of our kids still lives with us. The others come and go, which is always lovely. But I still shout at them about turning lights off, not leaving the telly on when you're not watching it, etc., etc. Call me cynical, call me old-fashioned, but there are things that we can do.
There are small changes that you can do.
Give me your best tips and tricks.
So, you know, not leaving things on standby, that will make a big difference.
Absolutely. And that includes television sets, VCR players, all that stuff.
If you are cooking, I would suggest meal prepping, and if you're going to be switching the oven on, actually cook more than one meal. That oven is hot and cooking anyway, so start doing meal prepping and cooking more than one meal in the oven at a time. So that's prepared. there are lots of things. Just turning the thermostat down by 1 or 2 degrees will make a difference to the cost of energy.
Yeah.
If you're putting cold water to the mix in your shower or in your bath, then your hot water is too hot if you're having to add cold water, and that's costing you energy. So turn your thermostat down slightly so you're not needing to add cold water to your hot.
Victoria, Joe will hear your answer to this, so make it as brutally honest as possible. Given what you said earlier and David said, are you worried that we are beyond the point of good, clever and helpful self-help tips, or do you believe that we need to drill down into personal habits and personal responsibility more?
I think it's probably an element of both, but clearly when it comes to what we're seeing in the energy markets, this is something that's taking place across the world. You know, Joe Biden, for example, is looking to try and push oil prices down going into the election year. So governments are trying. They're doing their best to really try and help people. Clearly, as you say, fuel poverty is on the rise. Not a situation that anyone wants, but these are global market forces that are taking hold after the pandemic and then exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. So it's a really, really challenging time. And I do think there is an element of personal responsibility. You know, we can turn down our thermostats, we can switch lights off, we can switch the TVs off, things like that. And those incremental differences, when accumulated together, can make some kind of change.
There are a number of people, Joe, who, I mean, not least friends of mine here at GBNews, who've been campaigning really, really hard to say, yeah, save the planet, sure, climate change and all of that stuff, but not now. We can't afford to do it. Freeze net zero. Take that out of the bank. Stop those green levies. Now, I want an honest answer from you. Would you put your hand up for that? My honest answer would be, I think that's the wrong decision. I don't think the right answer would be going back to dirty energy. I think we need to press on with net zero. I think, you know, we need to remove some of the bureaucracy in terms of bringing about policy changes that allow us to expedite that so that we can install more renewable assets in people's homes at a much quicker pace. My producer just said in my ear, another big energy supplier, no names, no Pactrill, has also crashed. So at least people are listening to the advice that you're giving, but it's going to be a tough few weeks and months.
Yes, it will be. Yeah. But, you know, especially families that have already had smart meters installed and you've got your in-home device, you can use that as a tool to actually help you to actually make energy-saving measures. And this is about behavioural change. We can actually help as Butterfly Energy with the servicing of your account.
It's not just gimme, it's helped me myself as well.
Yeah.
Joe Gilbert, it's been a real pleasure meeting you, and the best of luck with Butterfly Energy. And keep in touch. I'd love to chat again, particularly when we're a little bit on the other side of this cap coming in before October threatens us. And you, brilliant. Lovely to see you again. We met for the first time ages ago, and it's lovely to renew our friendship. Victoria Scholar from Interactive Investor, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Bless you both. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is On the Money with me, Alistair Stewart, and rather excellent friends there. Coming up, today's Money Talks interview with a Bitcoin entrepreneur arranging cryptocurrency donations to people escaping the conflict in Ukraine. But first, let's bring you right up to date with the GB News. Here once again is Rhiannon Jones.
Alistair, thank you. It's 1:33. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. The UK has announced 14 additional sanctions against Russians, with broadcaster RT among those targeted for spreading propaganda. It comes after Ukraine's president called for tougher action against Moscow. Volodymyr Zelensky received standing ovations as he addressed the Dutch and Australian parliaments this morning. He told them Russia poses a nuclear threat to the world.
We know that our dream is undefeatable and undestructed, especially if we can count on the support of the free world, on your support, on your assistance. And like in the history that I just told, we needed not just in a couple of months, but we needed urgently.
In a rare public address, Britain's spy chief has said Vladimir Putin's advisors are scared to tell him the truth about the progress of his Ukraine invasion. Speaking in Australia, Sir Jeremy Fleming told the audience the Russian president has massively misjudged the resistance of the Ukrainian people. The Foreign Secretary is urging India to join allies in opposing Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Liz Truss is in New Delhi for talks with her counterpart. It follows concerns the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is reluctant to publicly condemn Moscow's actions. And households are expected to be more than £2,500 worse off due to the cost of living squeeze. New analysis from Labour combined tax hikes, food, energy and fuel prices, as well as mortgage costs. TV online and DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. It's back to On the Money with Alistair next. Don't go anywhere.
Hello. Winter has most definitely returned. A cold feel out there today. Plenty of sunshine around, but some wintry showers will also continue. High pressure is moving in, bringing, as I say, plenty of sunshine. This weather front brought some wet weather overnight and a covering of snow in places. But around the high, the winds are coming down from the north, hence the cold feel, but also feeding in the moisture from the North Sea, bringing in showers down the eastern side, which will continue to have that wintry mix. Hail, sleet and some snow on the hills. A really strong, bitter wind across East Anglia and the southeast. And a few more flurries likely over the high ground across parts of Kent in particular. It does feel cold despite the sunshine further west. Temperatures only in single figures. Add on that wind and it feels much closer to freezing. As the showers keep coming in from the North Sea through the evening and overnight, it could well turn icy as temperatures tumble across northern and eastern Scotland, northeast England and southeast England too, with a continued threat of further snow over parts of Kent in particular, mostly over the hills. But as I said, it could be slippery almost anywhere we see the showers coming in. Those showers will continue to be a mixture of sleet, snow and hail. A widespread frost, certainly in the west where we'll have largely clear skies. A dry, fine start to Friday for many. Plenty of sunshine, which will melt away any frost, but still one or two showers for Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and certainly still more to come across parts of eastern England. And again, still that wintry mix, hail showers, some sleet and snow. And then we'll see some wet weather coming south across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, again with snow on the hills and mountains across western Scotland. Again, a cold feel on Friday with temperatures still in single figures and well below average for most. Temperatures falling away on Friday night, so again it could turn quite slippery out there, particularly where we've got this wet weather working southwards with some snow likely mixed into that over the hills across the southwest on Saturday morning. High pressure moving in there, so a lot of dry but cold weather this weekend.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Money with me, Alastair Stewart, and thank you very much indeed for so doing. I asked for emails and tweets. Goodness me, you've been busy. We'll have some of that at the end of the programme. But first, a P&O Ferry worker has exclusively told GB News about the day he was sacked on the spot whilst on board a ship in Rotterdam. He says staff were ordered back to the UK on coaches with no food, water, or even a ticket home. These new revelations come amid today's deadline for P&O workers to accept or decline their compensation packages. Our reporter Ellie Costello has been speaking to the P&O employee and has this interview, and we've kept his identity secret for legal and rather obvious reasons.
For staff on board the Spirit of France ferry, which was docked in Rotterdam, they were sacked via a written statement. They were told to get off the ferry and return back to the UK immediately. Many of the sacked employees had lived and worked on the ship for over 20 years. One sacked seafarer, Toby, not his real name, has told me exclusively what that day was like.
The captain said there was going to be a big announcement. He didn't sound quite right on the tannoy. Then the security guards started moving up, coming up the gangway onto the ship. They told everybody to go to the front bar, and all the security guards came along and blocked all the exits. And then some man in a suit read out his statement, and we were all told to pack our stuff, get off the ship as soon as possible, and they'd lead us to our cabins to pack. It's unbelievable. It felt like we'd been invaded by a load of pirates, to be honest with you. And then after that happened, they started bringing the crew on. I think they're all Colombians, and we're still at the front bar. That's the only time it nearly kicked off on our ship, because the crew was reacting bad enough from being sacked. And there you are. And then the agency label was taken upstairs, and our chef went upstairs to check on the staff food, and they were eating all of our staff food. Can you believe it? It's unbelievable. The way they treated us made you feel like you were worthless. You know, I mean, we've worked our butts off basically for the last 2 years, and now it's coming to the end like at the end of a tunnel, and you're sacked. And you get repaid by being sacked on the spot and replaced by slave labour. That's what it is. Slave labour.
So why do you think it was done in the way that it was? Why do you think P&O Ferries got security involved?
The security wasn't even there for our safety. It was in case we vandalised the ship, like the French did when they got sacked, because they smashed their ships up big time. But I mean, we're not like that. We're English. We're seafarers. On the gangway, we were asked our name and then handed an envelope with our redundancy offer on it. Even if I was offered my job back, I wouldn't take it if Peter Hebblethwaite was still there. The whole system's got to change. They've got to start caring for their workers more.
And what was the journey like back home after that experience? You must have all been so shocked.
We were put onto coaches home from Rotterdam. There was no food or water all day. We had a pregnant woman on our coach who was really stressed. We finally got to the Eurotunnel, and there weren't even any tickets booked for us. Eventually, the bus driver paid for all of our tickets on a company credit card, and we all managed to get onto our competitor DFDS's ship, and they put the whole crew in the Premier Lounge, where we got free tea and coffee. They treated us better than our own company, really.
We put these allegations to P&O Ferries. In a statement, they did not deny that the sacked seafarers were not given food, water or a ticket to get home. A spokesperson has told us, "We profusely apologise for the difficulties people had during this journey. Due to reasons outside of our control, we weren't able to use the pre-arranged route, and alternative arrangements had to be made at the last minute." In response, Toby says he does not accept P&O's apology, and this statement sums up the way that they had treated their staff. He wishes instead to thank the great British public for all of their support. Ellie Costello, GB News.
Extraordinary stuff there. A big industrial on-the-money story, but also one of enormous human interest too. Time now for On the Money's daily interview series, Money Talks. Cryptocurrencies are the Marmite of money. Some dismiss them as the cyber plaything of very wealthy and, to be frank, criminal and money laundering folk. Others, however, say they are the future of foreign exchange. Big corporations have bought into them. And some of those wealthiest in the world, not least Elon Musk, of Tesla fame and putting people into space. Well, one of those on the positive side of the agenda is my next guest, William G. William's a Hong Kong businessman and philanthropist whose cryptocurrency platform, Himalaya Exchange, is funneling aid to Ukraine. William J. joins me in our studio, our latest guest on Money Talks. Great to see you. I warned you of this first question. I didn't warn you of any of the other questions. Give me and our viewers and listeners the 30-second definition of a cryptocurrency.
Sure. In a nutshell, cryptocurrency is a form of digital currency. They use the cryptography, technology to secure any transactions, and it's quite different because they don't need a third party like a bank to verify any transactions. Instead, all the transactions are recorded in distributed ledger, public ledger, called blockchain, and all the digital currencies are stored in a digital wallet. And as long as there is an internet, you can use digital currency. So it's very convenient.
And one of the crucial things, and we'll come to this in the context of Hong Kong, China, Ukraine and Russia in just a moment, but it's outside of the normal reach of the authorities and of governments, isn't it? It's between you guys and gals who do it.
Well, effectively, yes, it's between the peer-to-peer transactions, right? But right now, at the beginning, governments want to stop this cryptocurrency because there are a lot of illegal tradings, right? But the government right now find that it's actually impossible to stop this. As long as you got internet, there is a cryptocurrency transactions. And what a lot of governments are doing right now is actually to regulate. I think right now the regulating is actually getting more and more stringent, and I think it's good for the development of the whole cryptocurrencies.
And is that self-regulation?
Well, they are regulating the exchanges, the cryptocurrency exchanges, and I think it's getting more and more stringent. And then we'll talk about KYC, AML transactions check. I think this is actually good for development, a good trend for development of the whole cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, and final point on this, because you wouldn't demur from my charge that in the public media, in the public domain, if you say cryptocurrency to some people, they immediately think of bad guys, money laundering, and the dark side of the economy.
Well, this is actually in the past, and I've been talking to many fund managers, global fund managers, and I've talked,
and that's your point about regulation.
So, yeah, exactly.
Come clean, come open.
Exactly.
Okay. So, why is it appropriate as a means of channeling aid, and you've been enormously generous yourself, and your fund, Himalaya, to Ukraine, to the people there who are in such great need? I mean, can you buy a blanket with a Bitcoin?
Well, effectively, yes. I mean, as long as the merchants accept the cryptocurrencies, you can literally buy anything. Right. Take my exchange example. I mean, I'm a founder of a foreign crypto exchange, and basically, a lot of donations are through the cryptos, and we use the cryptos to buy a lot of things. I mean, I've also formed a charity called Hong Kong People Association.
Yes.
We use all the donations to buy a lot of medical supplies, and actually, we have colleagues going to Poland, donate all these medical supplies. I think in this, humanitarian disaster, speed is very important. We have to have the speed.
Yeah.
And right now, actually, it's almost impossible for fiat currencies to donate to the country.
Is the supplier of the blanket and the food stuff and the medical supplies, are they being paid in cryptocurrency, or is the cryptocurrency funding dollars and
I think
rubles?
it's a quick way to donate in cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Of course, you can cash out and buy the medical supplies and buy the things. And there are some merchants, they actually accept cryptocurrencies, and you can buy things from these merchants.
Yeah. The Ukrainian government, I found this fascinating when I was researching the fact that you and I were going to be having this conversation. Zelensky, who is very much a modern man, that's perfectly clear.
Yes.
He's bought into it in a big way. $100 million.
Yes, exactly. They raise more than $100 million right now. I think, and this is not the first time that cryptocurrencies are helping in this situation, right? We see the Republic of Congo, for example. Last year there was a volcano. Issues, and basically they have the lightning torch program that you help a lot of people. And we see the Bitcoin Beach projects in El Salvador, for example. So actually, in an emergency situation, or in a lot of group grassroots movements, actually cryptocurrencies can help the society.
It's also important, it goes right back to the beginning, when I asked you to define what it is and what its relationship is with the authorities and transparency and regulation. Your first trailblazing operation in terms of up against an authority with whom you were not entirely comfortable was in Hong Kong, so Beijing was not aware of what you were doing or couldn't interfere with what you were doing.
Well, in a way, yes. Okay,
That's pretty gutsy.
I mean, put it this way. I'm from Hong Kong, and actually, I feel the pains of Ukrainians. I really feel that. I mean, I'm very concerned what happens in Ukraine today, what happens in Taiwan tomorrow. This is my concern. So that's why I want to...
Don't interrupt you. That's a crucial point. Do you feel as angry with us, then, for having given Hong Kong back to Beijing as you feel about Russia invading Ukraine?
Well, actually, there is basic laws, right? There is agreements between, Britain and China, right? But the problem is actually, the promise is 50 years, there's no change in legal system and everything. But right now, I have a concern.
What Chris Patten, Lord Patten, delivered would have been OK if everybody had stuck to it. But it's exactly the same as Ukraine. Well, if Russia had stuck to the treaty that guaranteed a non-nuclear Ukraine, it wouldn't have happened. Yes. You're going to have to come back, because that's another conversation. Because I do want to ask you, we've got a couple of minutes left, William. Just park cryptocurrency for a moment. You had a hugely successful career before that as an investment banker, as it were, in the traditional world. How worried are you about the current energy crisis, global energy crisis, and cost of living here in the UK?
Well, I'm very worried. Not just because of Ukraine wars. My concern is actually, people are asking, when the Ukraine war will finish. Actually, I'm very concerned it's the beginning of the crisis, of more wars. So this is my concern. I mean, obviously,
as Zelensky said, if he gets away with Ukraine, where next?
Exactly. So I think as I mentioned earlier, right? So I'm very concerned in Taiwan, and globally, I think the invasion to Ukraine has actually changed the geopolitical and economic situation, so globally. And my concern is actually oil prices will continue to go up, not just because of the war in Ukraine. It's actually there will be more happening. And I'm even concerned that the axis of evil are forming, a new axis of evil are forming. This is my concern.
If you were still investment banking right now, forget cryptocurrency again for a moment, would you be buying into the oil companies? Would you be buying into future stocks of crude oil? What would your market position be on the energy crisis?
Yes, definitely. I mean, oil, definitely, personally, I see the oil prices will continue to go up, and food prices, inflation, and its cost of living, everything. And as I just mentioned, it's not just because of this war. It's because it's the beginning of a bigger war happening. So this is my concern. And actually, cryptocurrencies, I mean, going back to cryptocurrency, actually, cryptocurrency is a good way for the general public, for the people, to escape from the oppression of the authoritarian regime. So I think this is very, very important. And personally, I think the cryptocurrency market will continue to increase.
All right, William, a real pleasure to meet you. And thank you so much for spending so much time with us, explaining what it is and what perhaps it can do. William G. there and his great Himalaya fund doing so much for Ukrainian people. Before we finish, let's bring you your emails as promised. And OK, forgive me, anyone who watches me at the weekend know I'm a very big family man. But this was so good from my daughter, I had to share it. My daughter writes, "It's getting so expensive just to go to work. Public transport also widely expensive too. About £100 for a day in London with a travel card. It's simply not sustainable." Thank you, Clemmy. Now get back to work. This one is a tweet and it comes from Claire. I think, yes? Yeah. "I've got a small car and it costs £60 to fill up yesterday. On a more concerning note, Pay at Pump now pre-authorises £100 before allowing you to take fuel." Claire, Robert Halfon's on your case and he's doing what he can. Christopher tweeted, "You had a woman on earlier suggesting that people use smart meters. Smart meters not only cost well in excess of £50 a year to run, but they don't save anyone a penny." Well, that's the view there from Christopher. We've got another email now from Carl. Carl says, "Green energy is not the way. I'm with a so-called 100% renewable energy company, but my bill is going up in line with everyone else's. Why? Is wind more expensive? Is solar? Nuclear is clearly the only option. Well, we did talk about that a little bit earlier on. And I now have one from Mark. It's obvious that the oil companies are now profiteering due to the mental green electric car agenda. The government are to blame, but be warned, Labour will be worse. Mark, thank you very much for that. I'm not going to get into the last bit of that, but we do politics elsewhere on this station. Now, this one is from Frederick. I've just returned from a shopping trip to Sainsbury's, and the price of everything is up. I hear their pain, but I'm not sure much of the price hikes are profiteering. Interesting balance there with the previous one. Frederick goes on to say, it'll be interesting to see their profits at the next quarterly statement. Won't it just? I mean, bear in mind that Ocado, who deliver for a lot of these people, are in deep, deep trouble as well. Sadly, that's all time for today. Join me again tomorrow, though, where I'll be hosting a special On the Money programme dedicated to helping you beat the squeeze. This is GB News. Alistair Stewart. See you tomorrow.
Hello. Winter has most definitely returned. A cold feel out there today. Plenty of sunshine around, but some wintry showers will also continue. High pressure is moving in, bringing, as I say, plenty of sunshine. This weather front brought some wet weather overnight and a covering of snow in places. But around the high, the winds are coming down from the north, hence the cold feel, but also feeding in the moisture from the North Sea, bringing in showers down the eastern side, which will continue to have that wintry mix. Hail, sleet and some snow on the hills. A really strong, bitter wind across East Anglia and the southeast. And a few more flurries likely over the high ground across parts of Kent in particular. It does feel cold despite the sunshine further west. Temperatures only in single figures. Add on that wind and it feels much closer to freezing. As the showers keep coming in from the North Sea through the evening and overnight, it could well turn icy as temperatures tumble across northern and eastern Scotland, northeast England and southeast England too, with a continued threat of further snow over parts of Kent in particular, mostly over the hills. But as I said, it could be slippery almost anywhere where we see the showers coming in. Those showers will continue to be a mixture of sleet, snow and hail. A widespread frost, certainly in the west where we'll have largely clear skies. A dry, fine start to Friday for many. Plenty of sunshine, which will melt away any frost, but still one or two showers for Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and certainly still more to come across parts of eastern England. And again, still that wintry mix, hail showers, some sleet and snow. And then we'll see some wet weather coming south across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, again with snow on the hills and mountains across western Scotland. Again, a cold feel on Friday with temperatures still in single figures and well below average for most. Temperatures falling away on Friday night, so again it could turn quite slippery out there, particularly where we've got this wet weather working southwards with some snow likely mixed into that over the hills across